let it resound loud as the rolling seas. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of our new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won. Thank you.
All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome. My name is Bria Patterson. I'm a fourth-year undergraduate here at the University of Oregon studying computer science and math with a minor in ethics, and I'm also the current president of the Sigma Delta chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, which was founded this day 111 years ago, so happy Founders Day to all my Alpha Kappa Alpha sorors. Today, I will share with you a poem by late author, activist, and artist, and fellow Alpha Kappa Alpha soror Maya Angelou. You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still, like dust, I'll rise. Does my sassiness upset you? Why are you beset with gloom? 'Cause I walk like I've got oil wells pumping in my living room. Just like moons and like suns, with the certainty of tides, just like hopes springing high, still I'll rise. Did you want to see me broken, bowed head and lowered eyes, shoulders falling down like teardrops, weakened by my soulful cries? Does my haughtiness offend you? Don't you take it awful hard, 'cause I laugh like I've got gold mines digging in my own backyard. You may shoot me with your words, you may cut me with your eyes, you may kill me with your hatefulness, but still, like air, I'll rise. Does my sexiness upset you? Does it come as a surprise that I dance like I've got diamonds at the meeting of my thighs? Out of the huts of history's shame, I rise. Up from a past that's rooted in pain, I rise. I'm a black ocean, leaping and wide, welling and swelling, I bear in the tide. Leaving behind nights of terror and fear, I rise. Into a daybreak that's wondrously clear, I rise. Bringing the gifts that my ancestors gave, I am the dream and the hope of the slave. And so naturally, I rise. Thank you.
Good morning again. We are so excited that you are here. Just wanted to offer a quick announcement that we recognize everyone is on different schedules. So if you need to depart early, please feel free to do so. We would now like to move into the part of our ceremony in which we will be acknowledging our colleagues through award presentation led by Dean Sabrina Madison Cannon and Dee Paquette. We'd also like to welcome President Michael Schill, Provost Jayanth Banavar, and VP Alex Asenso to the stage.
Three?
No, here too.
Okay.
And this will work, right?
Yeah.
Can I hand this to you? Because I don't know where to put it. Oh, sure. Thank you. Good morning. Welcome again to our Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Awards ceremony. My name is Sabrina Madison Cannon, and I have the pleasure of being the Dean of the School of Music and Dance. I'm here today with my colleague, Gabe Paquette, Dean of the Clark Honors College, and we have the pleasure of recognizing and celebrating our faculty and staff who exemplify Dr. King's commitment to inclusivity, social justice, and the power of light and love to drive out darkness and hate. Each year, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Awards are given to individuals who go above and beyond the call of duty to live out the values of Dr. King in ways that enhance the academic mission of the institution. This year, our awards are in 5 categories. First, the LACE Framework Award focuses on how equity, inclusion, and diversity work is done and the extent to which the work reflects the LACE framework: love, authenticity, courage, and empathy. Second is the Social Justice Award, which recognizes colleagues who have made significant contributions toward improving access and opportunity for faculty, staff, and students on campus by dismantling barriers as well as putting in place policies and programs to enhance opportunity and success for underrepresented populations. Next is the Ideal Institutionalization Award, which recognizes individual staff and faculty members who have demonstrated outstanding commitment to the principles of the university's equity, inclusion, and diversity framework. The Ideal Framework, through implementing diversity action plans beyond the scope of their respective jobs, areas of research, or administrative responsibilities. Our fourth award, the Institutional Transformation Award, celebrates the values of Dr. King by recognizing individuals, units, or groups of people on our campus who have come together in ways that transform significant aspects of the way our university works. Lastly, a new award this year is devoted to outstanding diversity practitioners. It recognizes and celebrates colleagues on campus whose primary responsibility is in the area of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and who have furthered that work in extraordinary ways. This year's Award Selection Advisory Committee included winners from last year: Michael Andreasen, Justine Carpenter, Rosa Chavez, and Barbara Marbury. This year's nomination pool was large and exceptional, and we thank the committee for all their time and efforts. At this time, I'm delighted to invite our president, Mike Schill, Provost Giant Banifar, and Vice President for Equity and Inclusion. Oh, you're all standing there already. Why is that in the script? Sorry. Our first award, I'm sorry, I guess I will say this. After each award is given, the honorees will be congratulated and photographed to the right of the stage. Our first award for the LACE framework goes to Nedzer Aralis, who cannot be with us today. Nedzer is Community Director for Barnhart Hall and Riley Hall. Nedzer has served as a community director in university housing for the past 7 years, where he has touched the lives of thousands of students through a commitment to building a residential community that embraces equity and social justice. His nominator wrote this: "From heartfelt chats in the Res Hall lounge at 10 p.m. to hour-long conduct hearings that feel more like therapy sessions, Nedzer constantly demonstrates his belief that every interaction can be an opportunity to make the world a kinder, more connected, more compassionate place. Nedzer not only embodies love, authenticity, courage, and empathy in all of his work, but he inspires his colleagues to reach for these qualities too. We thank Nedzer for living out Dr. King's extraordinary sense of empathy and generosity of spirit and heart." Our award for social justice category goes to Allison Gash, Associate Professor in the Department of Political Science. Professor Gash's career has been devoted entirely to civil rights advocacy and scholarship, focusing on how political and legal institutions respond to or maintain systems of inequality and disenfranchisement. Most recently, Allison was instrumental in helping guide the university's redraft of the multicultural requirement, including chairing a group which developed faculty training about difference and power. Her department chair in political science, Craig Parsons, wrote in his nomination, "In service, Allison's work to make UO a more inclusive and diverse campus has been truly extraordinary." Beyond her curricular work, she's provided assistance for students who have experienced instances of hate crimes on campus or who have been the target of biased behaviors, researched existing department and university rules and procedures concerning equity and inclusion in order to make them more legible, and identified methods for supporting the work of faculty and students, particularly women, people of color, and those who identify as LGBTQ. It is frankly hard for me to imagine a UO faculty member who could be more deserving of the MLK Award at this time. Thank you, Allison, for your devotion to social justice and all that you do to remind us of Dr. King's counsel that our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. It is my great honor at this time to pass the podium, I was going to say the baton, to Gabe Paquette, Dean of the Clark Honors College, to announce the awardees in our next two categories.
Thank you, Dean Madison Cannon. It's a great pleasure to be here to celebrate so many amazing contributions to our university community on the part of many of our colleagues. It's my pleasure to award the next award, which is an effort to institutionalize the ideal framework. And those awards go to Lisa Abia-Smith, Director of the Educational Outreach at the Jordan Schnitzer Museum of Art, and Rebecca Hagerwaite, Nurse Practitioner at the University Health Center. In addition to her work at the JSMA, Lisa is also Senior Instructor in the College of Design, where she teaches courses in arts management, which focus on disability studies, diversity and accessible arts curriculum development. And at the JSMA, Lisa has led the creation and implementation of the museum's Diversity Action Plan. She's spearheaded initiatives such as exhibition accessibility, inclusive professional development, and mentorship for staff and volunteers alike. And what makes Lisa's work noteworthy is its broad impact on many different facets of campus and community life, as well as university processes. Jill Hartz, JSMA's executive director, wrote in her nomination, "Lisa's work goes far beyond the requirements of her position. And in the process, she makes the JSMA, the university, and our larger community more welcoming and equitable environments." So thank you, Lisa, for helping the university to respond to Dr. King's exhortation to create a true and inclusive community. Our second award in the Ideal Institutionalization category goes to Rebecca Hagerwaite, a family nurse practitioner in our university's health center. She's served as chair of the health center's Diversity Action Committee for many years, and she's led the effort to create a comprehensive multicultural toolkit for practitioners, which among other things provides guidance on cultural sensitivity, implicit bias prevention, and gender identity. And in fact, this toolkit has been a resource for other units on our campus, and recently Rebecca was selected to present that work at regional and national college health conferences. Her nominator, Kira Wilson, wrote that Rebecca's ongoing leadership in equity and inclusion is unmatched. She weaves diversity in her day-to-day work as a nurse practitioner, as well as in her personal life. Her efforts have changed the way the University Health Center approaches multicultural competence, and our staff, campus partners, and our student population have benefited from her knowledge and guidance. Thank you, Rebecca, for exemplifying Dr. King's compassion for and outreach to all. In order for diversity, equity, and inclusion to take hold, people at all levels of the university must lead change in courageous and visible ways. And our first Institutional Transformation Award goes to Suzanne Hanlon, Assistant Program Director for Student Activities. Suzanne has been a fierce advocate for our students, and she may be best known on campus for her leadership of the BE Series, a high-impact series of events, workshops, and mentoring sessions with inspirational speakers, encouraging students to explore their diverse identities through the interconnection of the personal, professional, and academic. Her nominator wrote of her work, Suzanne uses the BE platform to empower students, and her mentorship and encouragement continues beyond her regular job. I have had more than one student tell me that she helped them understand their strengths, believe in themselves, and provide constant encouragement through rough times. Suzanne is a shining example of a true ally and campus partner who uses her position of privilege to stand up for the goals of equity and inclusion. Thank you, Suzanne, for your unwavering commitment to building an inclusive university community. And our final Institutional Transformation Award goes to Danica Scott, Associate Vice Provost for Student Success. When Danica joined our campus a few years ago, she was tasked by President Schill to breathe life into his vision of student success on our campus, specifically to lead the effort to raise four-year graduation rates by 10% by 2020. And in her short tenure here, she has transformed the advising landscape on our campus. And later this year, when Tykeson Hall opens its doors for the first time, I think we'll be able to see, and it will be made manifest, her colossal efforts and leadership in this area. Danica's impact goes beyond championing the success of all of our students. Her nominator, Jessica Price, noted her ceaseless commitment to creating a welcoming environment for students, staff, and faculty alike. And I quote what she said here. Danica has endeavored to provide support to ensure the retention of underrepresented faculty and students, serve as a mentor to new staff, open her home to celebrate their arrival, and encourage members of the University of Oregon to pursue and stick with their dreams of advancement here in Eugene. So many of us are so grateful that Danica is here and that she has put in so much work to get us to come and to make us feel welcome enough to stay. Danica, we thank you for challenging and guiding our community to aspire and also achieve great things. At this juncture, it's my pleasure to welcome Vice President Alex Asenso back to the podium, who will introduce our Outstanding Diversity Practitioner Awards.
Thank you, Gabe and Sabrina, for your leadership, and thank you very much, awardees, for all of your great work and outstanding achievements. The Outstanding Diversity Practitioner Award is one that we're particularly proud to announce, as they are staff who are our DEI colleagues and I have the honor of working with more closely. This award seeks to elevate work that goes above and beyond the call of duty because of the depth as well as breadth, longevity, innovation, or its unusual effectiveness. Our first award goes to Steve Marazumi, who retired this past fall after serving an incredible 17 years as program advisor for the Multicultural Center, known proudly by many of our students as the MCC, a coalition representing and serving the needs of 26 different student organizations. Throughout his career, Steve was a fierce advocate for our students and promoted their leadership, development, and a sense of belonging on this campus, which has only recently seen trends toward more diversity. Steve is famously passionate about student and social justice causes, and over the years engaged the MCC in cutting-edge programming, bringing standout names and personalities to the university. Through this work, he helped create a pipeline of UO alum with an interest in social justice work who continue to remain engaged in causes for justice here and around the world. Our colleague offered the following sentiment about Steve, and I quote, "You cannot talk about advocacy at the University of Oregon and not mention Steve. For many UO families, student, alumni, Steve has had a tremendous impact on their experiences in classrooms, campus spaces, and across our statewide community. He's left an imprint on our campus that pushes the needle forward, and this legacy of and passion for social justice translates onward. We thank you, Steve, for your many years of service to our university and in particular to our diverse students. We wish you years of joy in your retirement. Please join me in congratulating Steve. Our second award goes to Candaris Hill, Multicultural Academic Advisor and Retention Specialist in the Center for Multicultural Academic Excellence, known as CMA, and Programs Associate in DEI's Campus and Community Engagement, known as CASE. Candaris has a long history of contributions to equity, inclusion, and diversity, dating back to his time as a student, because he's a double duck. Since joining CMA as a staff nearly 2 years ago, Candaris has worked indefatigably to build inclusive coalitions across student groups, helping to build a collaborative culture of leadership and professional development. Candaris has a deep commitment to equity and inclusion in higher education and has left a mark on the hearts of many. He consistently goes above and beyond in providing care, insight, and support for all students, especially our underserved populations. And even as a student at the UO, Candaris demonstrated tremendous leadership and courage, and we are grateful to have him on our team. As a testament to his commitment to our students, he was nominated for an MLK Award this year by no fewer than 6 student organizations. 6. One of his nominators opined, and I quote, "Candaris Hill is a gold standard of what a human being, especially those who aim to be an academic advisor, should be," end quote. I can think of no greater testament to your work than that. We thank you, Candaris, for your humble service in the image of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr., and to our students. Congratulations. This final award is a surprise of sorts, and we are so grateful to Mrs. Brittany Lopez and the Lopez family for helping us to keep this a secret from our third awardee, final awardee in this category, Rafael Lopez. Rafael Lopez, program manager in the Division of Equity and Inclusion, joined our division a few years ago as a program associate and was promoted quickly to manage all DEI programming with campus and community partners. As a result of his outgoing personality, keen intelligence, and charm, the breadth and quality of our partnerships and programming have increased. Rafa, as we lovingly call him, can best be described as a linchpin, not only in advancing the work of our university and division, but to our spirit as a team of equity partners. He truly embodies the commonplace approach to driving diversity by inviting others to engage and bring their full selves to the work. Rafa's attitude, his humor, acumen towards equity and inclusion work transfers to all of our population served, and we value his many efforts and numerous contributions on and beyond campus. Rafa embodies the spirit of hard work and diligence with the humble spirit and gracious heart. He is truly multifaceted talents: program management, training, relationship building, writing, building across communities, on campus and abroad. Rafa, Martin Luther King Jr. said, and he wrote, I should say, quote, "Not everybody can be famous, but everybody can be great, because greatness is determined by service. You only need a heart full of grace and a soul generated by love," end quote. This could have been written about you, and we thank you for your grace and dedication to the importance of this work that we do together. Thank you. Please join me in congratulating our 2019 Diversity Practitioner awardees. Once again, and at this time, I'd like to welcome to the stage Dr. Jacqueline Cordova Arrington and Eduardo Merera of the School of Music and Dance for a performance of Summerland by William Grant Steele. Please continue to enjoy your meal while they come up, but do so quietly.
Thank you very much for allowing that transition. I'd like to reintroduce our musical selection led by Jacqueline Cordova Arrington and Eduardo Moreira. Thank you again, Jacqueline and Eduardo, for that lovely musical selection. That was great. We will now, as we transition the stage, invite our 18th President of the University of Oregon, President Michael Schill, to the stage to introduce our keynote speaker.
Good afternoon. It is my great privilege today to be with you to celebrate the legacy of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. There is no better way to honor Dr. King's work than to see it live on and to see it be amplified by the people we are celebrating at today's luncheon. I'll introduce our guest speaker in a moment, but first I would like to say a few words about how Martin Luther King Jr., his work, continues to energize our efforts to make progress at the University of Oregon. Dr. King inspired generation after generation to fight for the equality he dreamt for his children. Today we recognize that while we have made incremental steps in the right direction, the struggle is far from over. Our university, the University of Oregon, cannot fully realize its mission of teaching, research, and service if the benefits of a higher education remain out of reach for underrepresented students and those students who feel marginalized. We cannot realize our mission if we do not have the curriculum and the programs that include the experiences of all people. We cannot realize our mission if our faculty and our staff do not reflect the rich and varied backgrounds and perspectives of our greater society. And we cannot realize our mission if we do not strive to create an inclusive environment in which every student, every faculty member, every staff member has the opportunity to flourish and reach their full potential. Dr. King inspires us to remain vigilant in these aspirations to make equity, inclusion, and diversity commonplace at the University of Oregon. I'm grateful to our honorees for their tireless work. Congratulations to all of the MLK Award winners, Nedzer Erelis, Professor Allison Gash, Lisa Abea-Smith, Rebecca Hegerwaite, Suzanne Hanlon, Danica Scott, Candaris Hill, Rafael Lopez, and Steve Morizumi. Now today, I would like to recognize the work of one other person at the University of Oregon. The Martin Luther King Awards Committee received 3 emphatic and glowing nominations for this person, but they knew that she would adamantly refuse to accept the award and would therefore insist that the light be shown on other people here today. So today, I am here in honor of the Martin Luther King Jr.'s Award Committee and in honor of Dr. King's work to celebrate and recognize Vice President for Equity and Inclusion and Professor of Political Science, Yvette Alex Asenso. Okay, I've got a lot more before she can come up here. Now, Yvette, no, come on up. Yvette had, you just have to listen to a lot. Yvette had no idea that I was going to do this, and given her extraordinary modesty, anybody who knows Yvette understands this, is no doubt now going to be behind the stage, shirking and trying to not come out here. But it is important for all of you to hear what the nominators had to say. Yvette was nominated not just for one, not just for two, but for all three of the MLK Awards. Romance Languages graduate student Drew Edney nominated Vice President Alex Asenso for the Ideal Award for her bringing the Umoja academic residential community to the University of Oregon and for being an inspirational teacher. Quote, her unrelenting work to not only recruit a diverse African-American freshman class, but to create an ideal institutionalization of space and funds for African-American students to thrive is unprecedented. The creation of the Umoja Arc in and of itself has dismantled barriers and instituted programming that contributes to diversity and equality in our university. The Black Male Alliance, with support of 5 other Black student groups, also nominated Yvette for the Ideal Award, saying that their organization would not exist nor be as successful without her efforts. Quote, Dr. Alex Asenso has made great sacrifices for the betterment of current and future students. She has sacrificed her personal time and energy. We thank her for all she has done for the Black Male Alliance and the entire University of Oregon community. Kenna Gamalo, a UO graduate who will soon begin pursuing a doctorate in philosophy, nominated Vice President Alex Asenso for the Lace Award. He praised the way in which she has mentored and inspired him and so many others, saying, quote, Dr. Alex Asenso is a courageous individual that is unafraid to utilize her virtuous kindness to reach out to us, offer words of wisdom, empathy, and motherly reassurance that the world exists for us to flourish. He goes on to say, quote, she epitomizes the spirit and lifelong work of Dr. King. She is an advocate for those who feel as if they do not have a voice. Most importantly, she is an individual that has utilized her education, professional career, and overall platform to earn a spot at the table of influence and make the voice of the voiceless heard. Members of the Black Student Task Force, on behalf of several Black student groups, also nominated Vice President Alex Asenso for the Social Justice Award for her work overseeing the university's efforts to meet the demands of the BSTF. In their nomination, they wrote, quote, throughout her time at the University of Oregon, Dr. Alex Asenso has not just been an agent for change, but a true practitioner of the principles of Dr. King, especially when it comes to passing on the value of giving opportunities to others. She has encouraged us to sit on committees and host Black faculty, which has resulted in tenured hires. Furthermore, without her, we would have none of the following: the Black Studies Department, Umoja Scholars, Black Cultural Center, African American Speaker Series, Black Male Alliance, renaming Dunn Hall, which formerly honored a Ku Klux Klan leader, to Unthank Hall, and an interpretive exhibit in front of Dee Dee Hall, explaining the heroic survival stories of Black Oregonians and the integral role Matthew Dee played in developing Oregon's exclusion laws. They went on to say, when we say Dr. Alex Asenso is the greatest administrator with regards to diversity, equity, and inclusion, it is not hyperbole. Perhaps no one at the University of Oregon embodies the legacy of Dr. King, not just in spirit, but in bold, tireless work. Her institutional achievements will be felt long after she's gone. Yvette, I hope that day is long, long away. You are an inspiration, as these nominators have so eloquently stated, and as I'm sure many in this room, virtually everybody in this room echoes, you embodied the work of Dr. King in everything you do. I am incredibly grateful to you for your guidance and counsel during my tenure as president, with gentle words and actions, and even sometimes a much more firm push. You have propelled the University of Oregon forward to be more equitable, to be more inclusive, more diverse. We would not be where we are today without you. We would not be celebrating the 9 or 10 people we were celebrating today without you, nor would we be prepared for all of the work that we have ahead. Thank you. We all thank you for your courageous and unrelenting advocacy. Thank you, Yvette. Okay. And now, my job, and my pleasure, which is to introduce our speaker as part of the University of Oregon African American Speaker Series. Bakari Sellers is a CNN political analyst and a former representative from South Carolina. He made history in 2006 when, at just 22 years old, so the same age as some of our students here, he defeated a 26-year incumbent state representative to become the youngest member of the South Carolina state legislature and the youngest African-American elected official in the nation. In 2014, Sellers won the Democratic nomination for lieutenant governor and is widely considered to be a rising star within the Democratic Party and the leading voice of his generation. He earned his undergraduate degree from Morehouse College, where he served as student body president, and his law degree from the University of South Carolina. Notice they put law last in his biography. He has followed in the footsteps of his father, civil rights leader Dr. Cleveland Sellers, in his tireless commitment to public service while championing progressive policies to address issues ranging from education and poverty to preventing domestic violence and childhood obesity. Sellers served on President Barack Obama's South Carolina Steering Committee during the 2008 election. He has received numerous accolades, including being named Time Magazine's 40 Under 40 in 2010, the Route 100 list of the nation's most influential African Americans in 2014. He practices law with the Strom Law Firm in Columbia, South Carolina, and is a CNN contributor. Please join me in welcoming Bakari Sellers.
The first thing I always get is, I didn't know you were this tall. You don't look this tall on TV. So I'm going to raise the microphone a little bit. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. It is a privilege and a pleasure to be here with you all this evening. I am from the big city of Denmark, South Carolina, where we have 3 stoplights and a blinking light. And my mom and dad would always say that the 2 most important words in the English language are the words thank you, because they're not nearly said enough. And before I begin, I want to thank a few people who are here in the audience today. The first is your president, Dr. Schill, because my father was a college president, and I understand that oftentimes, this can be a relatively thankless job. But the University of Oregon is an institution that we look at from miles around and say that is an institution of higher education that is doing great work, that is doing God's work. And you are intentional about diversity and inclusion, and that's very important. So thank you very much for what you are doing here today. For your vice president who makes all of this happen, you deserve every accolade that you get. I always tell people you should give them their flowers while they are living. This room on what is a breezy day in Oregon is filled because of your leadership. And so thank you so very much. I have a city councilman in the building with me from Lane Community College. I will be there later this afternoon. Greg Evans, thank you so very much for being here. My nephew is here. Brandon, stand up so everybody can see you. There you go, wave. I don't know if any of his teachers are in here, but he paid me $20 to say that if he misses class the rest of the day, he's with me, so he has a good excuse. And you know, I am today, and to the planners of this event, thank you, because when I looked, I saw that the individual singing the Black National Anthem was only singing the first verse. And so thank you for allowing us to get out of here at a reasonable time. And I am going to treat all of you all today a lot like Elizabeth Taylor treated all 7 of her husbands, and that means I'm not going to keep you long. I always enjoy speaking at Martin Luther King Day ceremonies, oftentimes because we forget what Dr. King's true legacy was. As we get further and further away from his assassination, and I have to remind people that Dr. King did not die in his sleep. Dr. King did not just simply have cancer and fade away into the heavens. Dr. King was taken from us in the most vicious, hateful way that a man can be taken. Oftentimes I have to remind people that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was a revolutionary. And as we look back over history, oftentimes his legacy has been whitewashed. But even more importantly, Dr. King gave us a challenge which I will give you here today. He said that we must go on this journey. And for the purposes of our discussion today, we remember that life is not a singular step, but life is a series of steps. Life is a journey, and every journey must have a destination. And I think Dr. King would approve of our destination today, because we're going to take a journey to excellence. But in order to take this journey, we have to ask ourselves 2 very simple questions. And I apologize beforehand for bombarding you with questions that are rooted in such simplicity, but they're necessary to answer as we navigate this journey to excellence. The first is, how far have we come? And the next is, where do we go from here? Now, in answering that first question of how far have we come, it's necessary that we use some historical context. And for me, I like to think about a family not far from where I was born in Clarendon County, South Carolina. They were known as the Briggs family. The Briggs family, they only wanted their children to have the same opportunity as white kids, which was to ride the school bus to and from school. Black kids in Clarendon County oftentimes had to walk up to 9 miles one way. And so they filed a lawsuit against the superintendent in Clarendon County, South Carolina, and that lawsuit, known as Briggs v. Elliott, filed in 1949, was the first case that was filed in the landmark collection of cases known as Brown versus the Board of Education. Now, ironically enough, in Brown versus the Board of Education in 1954, and I'm going to take you back to your law school days, Dean Schill, make sure I get this holding right, but Chief Justice Warren got a very rare unanimous opinion in which he held that segregation causes a sense of inferiority by putting children in environments not conducive to learning. Now, some 60 years since, ask yourself that very simple question: how far have we come? I like to think back to 1946, and there was a young man named George Elmore. Now, see, George Elmore was a Renaissance Negro. George Elmore was so fair-skinned that he could pass for being white. But George Elmore was considered a Renaissance Negro because he owned a 5 and dime store. He owned a liquor store. He owned a photography company on the side. But George had the audacity to believe that he was going to go down and register to vote in the 1940s. So George showed up at the voter registration office, and you know they gave George his voter registration card. But that August, when he went to vote in the Democratic primary, the poll worker said, "George, we know you're a Negro. You can't vote here." But George was a man who was filled with pride. So George filed a lawsuit. He said, "You will not turn me away." That lawsuit was known as Elmore versus Rice, and as soon as he filed the lawsuit, they firebombed his liquor store. They stopped distributing to his five and dime store. They burned crosses on his front yard, and George Elmore, his wife, literally died in a mental health facility because of all the mental anguish and trauma that she had to endure. You see, George Elmore, he died a very broken man emotionally, mentally, and physically. But George Elmore is the reason, and Elmore versus Rice is the reason that African Americans can now vote in primaries in this country. So again, ask yourself that very simple question: how far have we come? And the last story I like to remember is one from 1954. There was a young woman named Sarah Mae Fleming. How many people have ever heard of Sarah Mae Fleming? Sarah Mae Fleming was a bad, bad woman. She was a 22-year-old domestic worker. One day, she and one of her girlfriends got off work, and they felt a little weary and tired. This story may sound a little familiar to many of you all. But Sarah Mae Fleming decided that she was going to get on the bus to go home, and she decided she was going to sit at the front of the bus. But you see, that wasn't her sin. Her sin was that when the bus driver told her to get off the bus, she didn't go through the back door that the Negroes or the coloreds at that time went through. She went through the front door, and the bus driver punched her in the stomach and rode her down the steps. You see, Sarah Mae Fleming, she wasn't looking to be a hero that day. She didn't wake up and say that I am going to be etched into history that day. In fact, she reminds me of Isaiah in the book of Isaiah when he was in the full awe and glory of the Lord, and he said, "And whom shall go for me?" And Isaiah said, "Here am I, Lord, send me." She wasn't trying to make history that day, but she said, "Here am I, send me." So she joined with some enterprising lawyers from the NAACP, and they filed a lawsuit, and Sarah Mae Fleming, she laid the foundation in action and law for another young lady who sat down some 17 months later named Rosa Parks. So again, I ask yourself that very simple question: how far have we come? And when I think back at it, and I think about the Briggs family, and I think about the fact that children still go to school in this country where their heating and air don't work, where their infrastructure is falling apart, where teachers are overworked and underpaid, where you're punished because of the zip code that you're born into, and you ask yourself that very simple question: how far have you come? I think you'll get one very simple answer. And when I think back to Sarah Mae Fleming and all she wanted was access to public transportation, and I think about the fact that many black and brown and poor people in this country still don't have access to public accommodations and public housing and public transportation and even clean air and clean water. What if I told you there were 100 cities in this country, in these United States of America, where they have a higher lead concentration than that of Flint, Michigan? And I think if you ask yourself that very simple question, how far have we come, I think you will come to one very simple answer. And then I think about George Elmore and the fact that he had to see his wife die in that state, that he had to give up everything that he had worked so hard for simply so that he would have access to the franchise of voting. And now we live in times where people try to make it that much more difficult to vote. Thank God for your governor of Oregon. But people try to make it that much more difficult to vote, and then there are many people who are in the generation that I reside in who do not still understand the importance thereof. And you ask yourself again that very simple question: how far have we come? And again, Madam Vice President, I will tell you that I have come to the resolve in my 34 years of great wisdom that the answer to the question, how far have we come, is that we've made progress, but we still have yet a ways to go. So as we take this journey to excellence together, our challenge is to now pivot and ask ourselves the next question, which is, where do we go from here? You see, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., in one of his better pieces of writing, now I think it's his second best piece of writing, and no, the I Have a Dream speech is not the first. I think the letter from the Birmingham jail is his best piece of writing. If you think it's I Have a Dream, we can fight later. It's okay. But he gave us these two choices. Where do we go from here? He gave us the choice of chaos or community. You see, I know a lot of you all see me in a little box. on TV. A lot of times I'm on Don Lemon or Chris Cuomo or Anderson Cooper. And we're going back and forth, and no matter what the little breaking news headline under me reads, it can just say chaos. Chaos at 1600, or chaos in Syria, or chaos at the border, or chaos at TSA, or just chaos times more chaos. But you see, the challenge that we all have, and I think the most important part of Dr. King's legacy is that all of us have to dedicate ourselves to building community. Let me tell you a story about a young man who was born at 633 Frederick Street in the big city of Denmark. When he was 10 years old, his life was changed forever. He would oftentimes say that when he was 10, he found out who the strongest woman in the world was. You see, there was another young man who had just been brutalized and murdered in Mississippi named Emmett Till. And I know many of you all know the story of Emmett Till. If you don't, take out your phones. I don't mind. I got stock in Verizon, so y'all can answer your phones. And Emmett Till's mother was so strong because I don't know if you all have some black folk or some grandparents that used to have Jet magazines. But you see, Emmett Till's mother allowed for her son, after he was brutalized and did not have any bones left in his body, his face looking like a pancake, to be photographed in an open casket. And that picture actually made it into Jet magazine. And this young man from Denmark said that Emmett Till's mother was the strongest woman he had ever heard of in his life. And so he ripped that picture out and put it in his wallet, and he began his journey in the freedom movement. He began to lead sit-ins in his hometown, and his parents were middle class. And his parents were scared, not just for his safety, but for their own economic security. And so his parents said, "We got to get you out of Denmark." Ironically enough, they sent him to Howard University. And when he got to Howard University, he befriended a young man named Stokely Carmichael. Stokely graduated from Howard University, but then convinced this young man from Denmark to drop out of school. Drop out of school and join this little small group of bandits called the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. And one of his first tasks was he went up to Miami University of Ohio, and I know there's a young lady in here who was sharing her story with me as well. Where is she? There she is. She knows all about Holly Springs in Mississippi. In Miami University of Ohio, an institution that is not, its place in history is not told enough, where they actually train workers to go down and register voters in the Delta. And this young man from Denmark actually got a phone call that he was going to have to go to Philadelphia, Mississippi. How many of y'all are from Philadelphia or ever been to Philadelphia, Mississippi? It's the size. No, you haven't been to Philadelphia, sir. It's the size of this conference room, ain't no bigger. And their task was to look for the bodies of 3 of their fellow slain civil rights workers. See, during the day, they would hide in barns and sheds, and at night, they would go out and look in ditches and trenches, and they were looking for Goodman, Schroeder, and Cheney. Ironically enough, they found these bodies behind the home of one of the local sheriff's deputies and ministers in the town. That was this young man from Denmark's first indoctrination, true indoctrination into the civil rights movement, and then he came home. He ended up becoming national field director for SNCC, and then he came home. He came home to South Carolina and became involved in the most deadly civil rights demonstration this country has ever seen. He became involved in the most deadly civil rights demonstration this country has ever seen. You see, on the night of February 6th, 1968, the students at South Carolina State College, as it was known at the time, decided they were going to protest the All-Star Bowling Alley, which sits back in a right angle. The history books call the All-Star Bowling Alley the last vestige of discrimination, Jim Crow's final hiding place. The plan was for 3 students to go into the bowling alley and get arrested, and so they could fight this out in the courts of law. But when they got down there and they began to clap and chant and sing protest hymns, state troopers and city police began to surround many of the students and press up against the students, and the students began to press up against the glass, and then the glass broke. When the glass broke, all hell broke loose, and many of the students began to be beaten by police, and they were beaten with police batons, but not normal batons. They were beaten with batons that were about this long, and at the end they had these leather rawhide whips. There's a young man named James Stroman who tells a story about being there that night and seeing 2 state troopers hold one young lady while another one beat her. On that night, the students, they had to go back to their campus and they had to heal not only their physical wounds, but their mental wounds and emotional wounds as well. Then came February 7th, 1968, and I think the saying was, older people say the tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Well, for me, I guess I'll relay it to when y'all are playing Oregon State and you in the parking lot after the game and you feel like something about to pop off. Is that type of unease? That's what it felt like on the 7th, but nothing happened. But then came that fateful day of February 8th, 1968, when the students, they went to their campus and they began to build this bonfire after they protested at the bowling alley. See, they had got the right idea. They went back to their campus. They went back to their campus. They went back to their campus because they felt safe in their communion, because they had gathered together much as we've gathered here today for a singular cause and a common good, but they could not foresee what would happen next. You know, they did not foresee that South Carolina State troopers would line up along the embankment in front of their beloved campus. They did not foresee that these state troopers would have shotguns that were loaded with deadly double-aught buckshots. They were around a bonfire, and you can imagine what a bonfire is like in the deep South in February. It's not too cold, but it's just cool, and the embers, how they just illuminate the darkness and the warmth, it just warms up your bones ever so gently. And for 8 seconds, 1001, 1002, 1003, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, those state troopers, they fired those buckshots of the same bullets we used to hunt deer into the group of students. It killed 3, Henry Smith, Samuel Hammond, and Delano Middleton. It wounded another 28. This young man from Denmark was shot in the shoulder that night. He went to the infirmary, and they told him there was nothing they could do for him there. He had to go to the hospital. When he got to the hospital, he was pointed out by the only black sheriff's deputy in Orangeburg County at the time, and he was arrested. He was arrested and charged with 5 felony counts, looking at a maximum of 75 years in prison. In between the night of his arrest and the day of his trial, all 9 officers who fired shots into the group of students were tried, and all 9 officers were found not guilty. But this young man from Denmark, he went to trial, and the lead investigator said that he had misplaced the evidence, but he did remember this young man from Denmark, not on the night of the 8th, but on the night of the 6th, standing on top of a fire truck and yelling, "Burn, baby, burn." So his indictment was backdated from February 8th to February 6th, and he was charged, tried, and convicted of rioting, effectively becoming the first and only one-man riot in the history of this country. You see, on that night, injustice, it left mothers without their sons. It left the pages of my state's history stained red with blood. But if you look at this young man from Denmark and you ask him, what's the greatest sacrifice he had to make, and you see that his eyes don't pop like they used to from shedding so many tears from so many loved ones lost throughout the freedom movement, and you see that his shoulders don't stand as upright as they once did from carrying the burdens of so many generations, and you say, what is the greatest sacrifice you make? He'll say it wasn't being in jail or losing his freedom per se. It wasn't being housed on death row while his bond was denied, but it was being in jail for the birth of his oldest daughter, or my big sister. Because this young man from Denmark who grew up into a civil rights hero is my father, Cleveland Sellers. And you see the lessons that you learn from people like Henry Smith and Samuel Hammond and Delano Middleton and Jimmy Lee Jackson and Majeska Simpkins and Septima Clark and Medgar Evers and Emmett Till and James Foreman and Marion Barry and Julian Bond. Let me back up. I don't let anybody talk bad about Marion Barry in my presence. And Andy Young and Maynard Jackson and Fannie Lou Hamer and Ella Baker. All of these names, the George Elmores, the Elliots, the Sarah Mae Fleming, even before you get to Rosa Parks, Malcolm X, and Martin Luther King, teach us that the answer to the question, where do we go from here, lies fundamentally in the ability for us to do 2 things. Now, one is easy and one is damn hard. But the first thing is we have to believe what King said, but we have to take it one step further because we have to learn how to dream with our eyes open. That means that we live in a culture of low expectation in this country now, and now we have to again, teach young people how to dream, because you can't tell a poor black kid he can be a doctor if he's never seen a black doctor. You can't tell a poor black kid that he can be a dentist if he's never seen a black dentist. So you have to teach these kids and teach these young people and those who are young at heart to dream with their eyes open, to be that example. And the second thing is, which I struggle with, and many of you all see me on TV struggling with this concept, is we have to rededicate ourselves to the proposition of loving our neighbors. But see, this is what King talked about, which is why it's so hard, especially in this climate, because we have to love our neighbors even when they don't love us. And that's the most difficult challenge that we have. So as we're on this journey to excellence and we ask ourselves that very simple question of how far have we come, I think that we understand that we've made progress, but we still have yet a ways to go. And as we pivot and we ask ourselves the next question, which is, where do we go from here? I think we understand that we have to dream with our eyes open in order to be able to see what that answer is. And we also have to love our neighbors even when they don't love us. But I think the last thing we have to do on this journey is fully understand what it means to be excellent. And I think sometimes institutions of higher learning, and even all of us in this room who are well-read, even forget what excellence is. And so I'll leave you with this. I firmly believe, with all due respect, if you're an educator in this room, you can be number 2. But Benjamin E. Mays is the greatest educator of all time. There would be no Martin Luther King Jr. if there was no Benjamin E. Mays. And Benjamin E. Mays once said, in all things that you do them so well that no man living, dead, or yet to be born can do them better. That's the definition of excellence. You see, that was Dr. King's dream. Dr. King's dream was not just to exalt him to a place where we whitewashed all of his accomplishments, whitewashed who he was as a revolutionary, forget that he actually understood what the smell of gun smoke was and laid on jailhouse floors. It wasn't for us to forget the fact that he had a 33% approval rating at the time of his death. The President of the United States, the 45th President of the United States today, has an approval rating of 39%. Martin Luther King Jr. at his death had an approval rating of 33%. So let's not forget who this man was. But let's hold him up and hold up all of those other heroes and sheroes, because without those names, many of which you have acknowledged because of your amazing vice president here on this campus, without those names, we would not have the success that we have today. So I don't know where we will be at the end of the day, but I am on this journey to excellence. I am on this journey to excellence because I understand, as King understood, that you may not get rich and your name may not be in lights. But all of those shoulders of those heroes and sheroes that you stand upon, when they are long and gone, they will be able to look down upon you and simply say, job well done. Thank you, and God bless you all.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sellers, for that very reflective, commemorative talk on what would have been Dr. King's 90th birthday. I also like to thank our students in the Multicultural Center for hosting our overflow. Please do feel free to stop by and enjoy a piece of cake. We'd love to have and see you. And it's officially time to close our program, and I'd like to welcome back our Vice President, Yvette Alex Asenso.
Thank you so much. It's almost 1 o'clock, so I will make sure that my comments are really brief so that you can get out. Thank you very much for being here today and for coming in such a timely manner so that we can get our program started. A shout out to everyone who nominated, anyone here who came to support, and most of all, for all of us, for all the work we do every day to make equity, inclusion, and diversity commonplace on this campus. I appreciate the acknowledgement and the honor by the Black Student Task Force and all of the other student groups, staff, and faculty who nominated me, and President Schill for kindly allowing that to take place. But one thing that I'd like us all to remember is that everyone here and everyone on this campus, in the community, who works toward equity, inclusion, diversity is important in making the work happen. There's no one person. That's why the value of this work on this campus is to make equity and inclusion commonplace. And we do that not by doing it fast, but doing it together so that we can go far.